Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone is refreshed, had a good holiday season, Happy New Year's, all of that. The NFL clock never stops. We are back this week, Read and React. I'm Ryan Parrish. I'm here with my co-host, Rylan Bickley. Rylan, how was your holidays?
It's not going too bad. How are yours?
Mine's pretty good, got to see some family, did some work as well, always working. So, it was a fun holiday season. It kind of went by in a blur, kind of like the last couple weeks of Steelers football. 3 games in 11 days. Absolutely brutal. NFL, please fix this. The buys this year were awful. Sucked for the games. I felt like they sucked. Sucked for fantasy football. We can't be having 4 or 5 different games, especially with injuries in the championship week. Come on, NFL. But that said, Hard Knocks was back last night. We bypassed the previous one. We might touch on it on a little bit in this episode, just referencing it, but we don't really need to dwell on the past. It's been an ugly couple of weeks, and honestly, the Steelers haven't been much of the focus because of how they've been playing. So, Rylan, let's just like always jump right into your recap of the most recent episode.
Not a ton to go over this week. We just started with the Steelers Chiefs game, then Ravens Texans, kind of put those two together, talked a bit about the Christmas schedule and the schedule and the problems with that. Just kind of how hard it is to recover on that short week. And then the last half was pretty much Bengals Broncos, and probably the most surprising thing was just no Browns like at all. They're kind of the afterthought with only three possible playoff teams left. So
We
that's about
did
it.
get Jameson matching pajamas with his wife.
True. How could I forget?
But yeah, no, it was like because I rewound after watching that too just to make sure. I mean, it makes sense, but I was like, did we really not get any Browns other than just like the first opening minutes of the show? And sure enough, we did not.
Yeah, I thought that it was just late and I had like somehow missed it. And I was like, wait, there was like no game footage or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what happens when you're starting Dorian Thomas Robinson and the main character that was in Hard Knocks has essentially, I'm assuming, been benched to make sure he doesn't hit any sort of bonuses because he's probably not going to be back next year.
Yep.
Just because that's kind of what the backup role behind Deshaun Watson currently is. No matter how well you play better than him, can't stay for too long.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, not a lot to talk about. I don't know if we're going to have a lot of our similar segments just because we don't have that much material. So, I guess what we should touch on is what we have seen from the Steelers is a lot of talk in both of the previous episodes of like how they need to get back on track, communication needs to be fixed, all that sort of things. Did you take anything else from that? Because it seems like a lot of like this is what we need to do, and then watching them not quite get there in game day.
Yeah, I mean, for the people who, might not be watching at home, there haven't been a lot of like vignettes or anything like that. It's just been a lot of, prep for the games and the game, and then the aftermath of the game. And so, yeah, it's been that. One thing I will say is I think that for people who think that like the Steelers aren't taking this seriously or something like that, I sometimes see comments like that on these losing streaks. That could not be further from the truth. I mean, they are mad about it. They are, I mean, the coaches are harping on all the same things that the fans are online, and it just isn't quite working out for them. But so I mean, it's frustrating to watch, but I do think, they're trying their best in Pittsburgh. They know what's wrong. It just they haven't quite been able to fix it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, that's kind of what my takeaway was, is it's not that they don't know what's going wrong. It's not that they aren't working on it and they're not like lazing through the weeks, although they did have obviously super short weeks. I think the main thing is it truly is, you hear it all the time, football is a game of inches, and you go back to the Chiefs and the Ravens game specifically, and even a little bit with the Eagles game. It's just, in weeks earlier where a ball would hit the ground or get tipped in the air while we're on defense, just hasn't bounced the Steelers' way. I know no one likes to hear that, but that's kind of been the case. They just haven't been getting turnovers at the same rate that they were. A lot of that is luck. It's why it's hard to live and die by the turnover because it's hard to get them in the NFL. And I think the main thing for me is if we can just see the defense all get back on the same page, because the most obvious glaring thing that you don't even need to be, deep in the X's and O's to notice is there's just a lot of hands being raised after plays, a lot of players looking at other players, and you can squabble on, if that's the right mindset to be having, but we're not there in the room, so I try not to armchair psychology 101 are the players. But to me that just points out, okay, somebody somewhere is either not performing their duty up to standard or is, as we can see on a lot of plays, just not on the same page of who they're supposed to be covering. And, you know, I know it's frustrating for fans, but I will point out that, when you actually listen to players like peel back the curtain a little bit and look at all the variables that can go into a single play, all the changes, all the option routes, all that stuff. I understand how it can happen. It's not an excuse, but it's clearly pissing the Steelers players off. We got a huge rant from Cam Hayward in the episode about how we need to get all this back on track. So, it's a tough time in the season to have this happen. You would much rather this happen in September, August, but it happens. I mean, losing streaks happen, and with the way this offense plays, you kind of knew the defense would have to be perfect most weeks, and that's kind of hard to ask.
Yeah, I feel like probably what's been the most interesting for me is we've spent a lot of these kind of talking about how like the vibes in the Steelers building have been so much better than the other three. And these last two, it's like it feels like Baltimore is where the good vibes are right now. And it's kind of strange to watch, but I think it just shows, winning is the cure all, right? I mean, if Pittsburgh can beat Cincy this week, we'll probably see that turnaround. It's like you can only talk so much and coach so well if you're not winning. It's hard to get that culture in the direction that you wanted to go. And I mean, it's so obvious to see in these episodes.
Cincinnati as well. They were down in the dumps when this series started, and they've been on a winning streak. They haven't been winning pretty, but they've been winning, and so you can see the vibes in that locker room shifting as well. Man, I don't know. The Steelers, I'm hoping they can find it. Like we've seen them be very good. In fact, of all the teams that they might face in the first round, you know, with the exception of the Texans, who they haven't faced, they've beaten the Chargers, they've beaten the Ravens, so it's in there.
Exactly. Yeah.
But man, it's just finding it and getting healthy too is a big thing. I mean, obviously losing Joey Porter Jr. in this stretch has been tough. I know that he has had his own fair share of criticism. Personally, I think some of that's a little overrated. I think he doesn't get the interceptions, which is tough. But to me, he's very similar in Ike Taylor, where, okay, maybe he isn't, Daryl Revis, very few people are. Maybe he isn't, modern day players. He isn't Patrick Surtain. He isn't, Sauce Gardner quite yet. Although Sauce Gardner had a down interception year too, I'd point out.
Yeah.
But, for the most part, he's not getting burned on a regular basis. And a lot of times when he's gets blamed, it's often in zone coverage where he's the guy that makes the tackle. So like, I don't know. He's not like, a top five corner in the league just yet, but I wouldn't say he's been a major problem. And I think him being out these last couple of weeks really kind of shows what he's been providing this team and how tough it is to get somebody in there and replace him when you're going up against the best teams in the league.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I've always believed that corner is probably the second hardest position to play in football, especially at that NFL level. And so, I mean, he's still a young player. And so there's going to be some ups and downs there. And yeah, I think he might have been just a tad like I hate using the word overrated, but like maybe we thought he was a bit more like surefire elite cornerback one, and there's still some growing to do. So I think that that's part of it. We kind of have to be honest, but yeah, I mean, I'm so far from worried. It's just a tough stretch.
Yeah, so I don't know. Obviously, there was a lot of squabbling in the media after the last game. Um, Parsing through that's tough because you're taking secondhand delivery, and depending on who the source is, some of the quotes from some of the beat reporters made it sound like it was a more general statement. Some of the reporters maybe tried to make it a little more, oh, it's one person, which I don't, who's to say we're not in that locker room, so it's really tough to tell who's interpreting players' quotes right.
Exactly.
You had some thoughts on that, so I'll let you share those now.
Yeah, I mean, nothing like really deep, but I mean, I do think I think it was that Cam Hayward quote that was like, when 10 people do their job and one doesn't, it's a big problem. And everyone, at least most of the people I've seen have been reading that as he's talking about one guy. A lot of people think it's Cam Sutton, and if it is one guy, it probably is. But when I first read that, I saw it in a very general sense. So I just do want to offer that in interpretation just in case, it's a very kind of football platitude thing to say. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
know if that drama is quite as bad as it's been spun out to be.
yeah, you hear it. It takes 11, and it doesn't really matter who the 11th guy is. If the 11th guy's messing up the play, whether it's a linebacker on one play, cornerback on another, safety, what have you. Uh, Football's a complicated game with a lot of smart individuals spending time trying to find ways to manipulate advantages, and it's all about spacing. And if you blow up spacing, suddenly, it's easy to start giving up chunk plays. And I think, the Chiefs game was a great example of where the communication is so important because it wasn't necessarily all huge chunk plays against them. They weren't bombing it downfield. It was kind of like our preview said. They were going to, be ruthlessly efficient with whatever we gave them, whether that was, big bombs or, matriculating downfield. And you pointed out the stacks. We saw Mike Tomlin in them, even mentioned it in Hard Knocks. Andy Reid, he's going to have these, bunch sets and he's going to find ways to, legally rub and pick and find ways to get guys open. And, it negates the pass rush when, Patrick Mahomes is catching it and already throwing it. It's tough to get there in 2 seconds, let alone if he's popping it out as soon as he gets the ball. So, tough game. But honestly, there's not a lot left to say in terms of Hard Knocks. They really just kind of showed the lead up, same types of meetings we've been seeing, impressing on the urgency. Well, I guess what are we expecting to see? It's all going to depend on this Bengals game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've seen some people online saying that the Cincy game doesn't really matter. It's just, you got to be healthy and head into the playoffs. But I mean, I'm telling you, momentum is absolutely a thing in football at every level of football. So I think this game is a lot more important than a lot of people would think. Even if it doesn't really matter in terms of, I mean, the Steelers are in the playoffs no matter what. But I mean, man, they need to get a win here just to get back on the right track and gain some confidence. I mean, I think that they could lose and still beat the Texans because if any team is more miserable right now in the playoffs, it's Houston. But you don't want that to be what's going on. You want to feel good heading into January.
Exactly. And even if it's a loss, I mean, obviously we want to win. A win, like you mentioned, confidence is huge. You don't want to go into the playoffs on a 4 game losing streak. But
Gosh, no.
but uh, you know, even if it's a loss and it's a game where they get back to being competitive, where they start doing the little things, doing the routine things routinely, as we have heard so often
Heyo.
this season and in years past, uh, would go a long way because I think, it's kind of a pushing point. There's some talk of everybody needs to do their job. Well, if we don't have people not doing their job heading into the playoffs, that's the type of stuff that just continues to fester and all the momentum that the Steelers had a month ago, it won't matter if the
Exactly.
players aren't believing in what's happening now. So honestly, I think that probably does it for our episode. It's not the cheeriest one. I'm sorry about that. Hope everyone's holidays makes up for that.
Yeah, I'll
NFL
throw in one
fixture
more thing.
scheduling.
I just, as much as we're talking about the Steelers here, the Ravens playing Texans Jeopardy was probably the highlight for me. Even though, I mean, I know, yeah, we're a Steelers podcast, but dude, that was awesome. I was getting flashbacks to like Kahoot reviews for college, so
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned
really
that
good
too, because
stuff.
that was actually probably what I would have said as well. And I guess I have one more thing I should mention just so that we're not completely glancing over it. But yeah, that was cool to me. Uh, I would like to, I don't know what the Steelers do, but I think that was a cool moment just kind of seeing the, the review and how fun that was for them. Also, previously the week before, seeing all the Ravens that are new Ravens talking about how important it is to beat the Steelers. You're not as Raven until you beat the Steelers. This appears to be big over there. So, didn't go the way we want, but it is great to know that we are so top of mind on them and their fan base.
Yeah.
Um, but the other thing I guess we shouldn't breeze through without at least mentioning is, and we've seen a bit of it before, but we got to see Russ at the hospital during the holidays, paying visits to all the kids that were, long-term staying there. And Russ is Russ has been about what I thought he would be this year. There's been moments of brilliance. There's been moments of head scratching of what is he seeing out there. But at the end of the day, this is the horse we've hitched our cart to. I
Yep.
still think that there is an opportunity, during the Ravens episode. They used a phrase we've been using, hey, three-pointers and layups. I think, and in the games that we last saw the Steelers offense playing well, they access that intermediate. And I think if they can find a way to get that done, I don't know
Yep.
whether that's, just with Pickens healthy and getting Calvin activated and Muth and Roman Wilson making a late appearance. I don't expect much out of him, but maybe we get a couple snaps out of him a game and
Fautanu,
see if
maybe.
he
I don't
can.
think so.
I don't know. I'm not going to trust that one. I feel like at this point, the tackle play is what it's going to be, and it's hard to throw a rookie in at this
Yeah.
point, coming off a knee injury. I would rather just keep him healthy so that he's ready to go next year. But, you know, there's possibilities there, and I think the Steelers know that. So, it's time. You got to gear up, and it's put up or shut up time.
Yep. Pretty much.
But with that, we are going to get out of here. Again, I hope everyone had a good holiday. We still got a few more days until the next game, and then playoffs will be here. So I think we got one more episode of Hard Knocks perhaps after this. I don't know if they're going into the playoffs with these
I
teams
think
or
just
not.
one more. Yeah.
Do they stop at the regular season or are they going through?
I'm pretty sure I saw that it was just six.
Okay.
So,
That's probably good. I don't know if they need the distraction during the playoffs. I will say one last thing. We made some predictions in the summer, and one of mine looked awful all year, and I'm not rooting for it because I want a Steelers win. But if the Cincinnati Bengals become the third AFC North playoff team, I've never been more upset to be right.
I mean, yeah, oh man, who knows?
But with that, uh, we're out of here. We'll see you all next week. Let's go Steelers, and let's be kind to each other out there as they figure it out. Next week, guys.
Awesome.